We're going to be introducing someone very special to join us on stage next. And she goes by the name of Seema Anand, and she is a mythologist and a practicing storyteller of ancient narratives. She also delivers courses on the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, Tantric philosophy, and the Mahavidyas, and connects these stories to have leadership lessons. Her extraordinary work on the revival and reproduction of the oral literature of India is associated to the UNESCO project for endangered oral traditions. She conducts strategic leadership and management sessions within the corporate sector. My friends, please put your hands together, make some noise, and welcome Seema Anand!
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to start you off with a very unusual conversation which begins at the start of the Srimad Bhagavatam, with Ved Vyas talking to Narad Muni, complaining about the Kali Yuga. And he says to Narad Muni, he says, you know what, I have done everything that I could. I have tried to write books on philosophy, I've tried to write books on every subject that every human being might need in their life at some point. I've tried to help, but nobody's paying any attention. Nobody's reading those books. And if anything, everything's just becoming worse and worse. Society is falling into disrepair. People are falling into depression. What should I do? And Narad Muni says to him, he says, the problem is you've made it too complicated. Who has the time these days to go off and read all these books on philosophy and then try and understand the philosophy and then try and figure out which is the right philosophy to add to what situation? You've made it too complicated. Go out there and tell stories instead. A story is the best way to teach somebody. That way you can also put the problem and the solution into the same place. And most importantly, everybody, when they hear a story, will learn from it what is their own capacity to learn. So tell a story. And so I am going to tell you a story, ladies and gentlemen. It's one of the most amazing stories that I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot. This story actually has the teaching of the entire universe in it. So, they say that every child is born with their destiny, with their kismet, that it's written over here. And we believe that at the birth of every child, Brahma comes to write that destiny. He writes it with a special pen, and he writes it in the sutures of the skull, so it cannot be seen and it cannot be erased. But here's the thing. Even Brahma has no idea what he is going to write before he writes it. Destiny is calculated a long time before the child is even born based on their good and bad deeds in their previous life. So Brahma simply puts the pen on the child's head and the pen writes the destiny. I guess it's because this way nobody can be bribed to change anything. Start of my story, there's a young man called Brihad. He's very young. He's about 18 years old. Brihad is there present by a series of strange circumstances at the writing of two destinies for a boy and a girl. And they're terrible destinies. The boy is now destined to live in complete poverty all of his life, and all that he's going to have in his life is one buffalo and one sack of rice. The girl has an even worse destiny. She's going to grow up to be a common prostitute. She's going to sell her body every night, and she's only going to live on what she makes every night. And the only thing that she will have in her life, something that she'll acquire along the way, is a necklace of the finest quality pearls. And Brihad is so angry when he hears this, because these are the children of his master, and his master was a wonderful man. He was good, and he was kind, and he was honest all of his life, and it is so unfair of the gods to give his children such terrible destinies. And this whole thing about everything is based on what you've done in your previous life, then what's the point of doing anything in this life at all? I mean, if this is not Kali Yuga, what is? He's so upset, he can't change anything, that he decides to leave. He goes off for 20 years, and he travels around the world. He's looking for answers. He's looking for the meaning of life. So finally, after 20 years, a thought comes to him. Destiny is just a path. How you walk that path is up to you. Time is not bad or good. Time is just time. This thing of Kali Yuga, it's a yuga. Your actions are what matter. Anything can be changed. And so Brihad goes back. He goes back because he's going to change the destiny of these two children. Well, they're not children anymore. It's been 20 years. They've grown up. They're young people. So he first goes to the house of the young man. He's living there exactly as Brahma had prophesied, in poverty with his wife, his two children. All he has is one buffalo on which he carries his load every day. He's a coolie. And one sack of rice from which he feeds his family a little bit every single day. When that finishes, he borrows a little bit of money, buys another sack of rice, and this cycle continues. And Brihad says to him, it's time to change this cycle. Tomorrow, you're going to take this buffalo to the market, sell it, with it, buy food, mix it with the sack of rice, cook it, and feed everybody that you come across. Give it all away. He says, the gods have written that this is your destiny. You're always going to have this. So let's see what happens if you give it all away. Thing is, there's one thing only. You have to give it all away, because if you keep even a little bit of it, then destiny will think that you have what is owed to you and nothing will change. Now, it was not easy to convince the young man, because I guess if you're that poor, it's not simple to just give away whatever little bit you have, but eventually he convinces him. So the next day, the young man goes out into the market, he sells the buffalo, he buys food, cooks it with the sack of rice, and they feed everybody that they meet. And it's a strange feeling, because for the first time, in feeding everybody, the family actually eats pet bharke themselves as well. That night, Brihad has the worst night ever, because he's petrified at what he's done. I mean, what's he going to do? How is he going to feed his family now? Are they just going to die on the roadside? The next morning, however, Brihad wakes up, as per his habit, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he goes to feed the buffalo. It was a habit. He gets there and he realizes that buffalo to bech diya, there's no more buffalo now. And as he thinks that, he suddenly sees in front of him a buffalo and a sack of rice. Brihad says to him, he says, from today, this will be your routine. The gods have said that this buffalo and this sack of rice is yours forever, all of your life. It's their problem of how they're going to get it to you every day. You will take the buffalo every day to the market, you will sell it. With the money, you will buy food, mix it with the rice, cook it, and feed everybody that you find. But remember, the secret is you give it all away, because if you keep even a little bit, then nothing will change, because destiny will think that you have what is owed to you. And having settled the young man, he then goes to the young girl's house. The young girl takes no time to be convinced, because she hates her life, she wants to change it. He tells her, he says, today you lock your door. Your destiny is to sell your body every night and live on what you get. Today, your price is going to go up, way up. Your price is going to be one necklace of the finest quality pearls. The young girl locks her doors, and as the customers come, she turns them away. They think she's gone mad. She wants a necklace of pearls. And initially, she feels really empowered. She feels very good. But then as the night starts to wear on, she starts to get really nervous, because she hasn't had any money that night. How is she going to feed herself the next day? But of course, before the end of the night, there is a knock on the door. And outside, there is a young man with a pearl necklace. Brihad tells her the next morning, he says, now take this necklace to the shops, sell it, look after the poor with it, whatever they need, feed them, clothe them, house them, whatever they need to do. And from now, this is going to be your routine. Every night, your price will always be one pearl necklace. The man who brought it to you yesterday is the only one who can afford to bring it every night. He's the only man that you will sleep with. And every day, you will sell this pearl necklace, and you will look after the poor. But the secret is, you give away everything. Don't keep even the tiniest bit for yourself, because if you keep any of it, destiny will think that you have what is owed to you, and nothing will change. Brihad stayed on for about a month to help these young people transition into their own lives, into their new lives. And then he decides to leave. And this is my favorite part of the story, actually. He decides to leave. The next morning, by mistake, he wakes up too early. Outside, it's still nighttime. The moon is still high in the sky, but he thinks, okay, I have such a long way to go. I may as well set off now. So he starts off down the road, and as he starts off, he sees another man coming from the other side towards him. And this man is hunched over, under the weight of this sack of rice on his head. In one hand, he's carrying a buffalo, and in another hand, he has a pearl necklace. And under his breath, he's mumbling. Ladies and gentlemen, can you guess who that was? That was Brahma. And poor Brahma, how his life had changed. I mean, every day he spent swimming around at the bottom of the ocean looking for these pearls. Every night he was walking up and delivering all this stuff. His feet were blistered. He was getting a bald patch over here from that sack of rice rubbing against his head. And it was all the fault of that wretched boy, Brihad. Till now, everything had been perfect because those kids were living in their misery as they had been told to do. And suddenly he's gone and changed their path. And now he's stuck in this position. And as Brihad walks past him, Brihad smiles. And he thinks to himself, maybe I should join politics. You know, every time I listen to this story, I learn one other thing from it. I learn something new. It truly has the teaching of the entire universe. But the one thing that always stands out for me is the fact that it took Brihad 20 years to figure this out. He didn't just do it overnight. Knowledge takes time and patience and understanding. Knowledge is not a WhatsApp message. You will not learn your philosophy overnight. Think of how many times Brihad would have tried to figure out a solution and failed and tried again and failed. Do you know, it is this trial and failure that makes these stories really special. In the West, psychologists are now saying that kids who grow up without listening to the try again stories are more likely to fail in life because they don't know how to deal with the challenges of life. Because even in this era of everything being instant, there are no instant solutions to life. We need these stories, and we have these stories. We come from a culture where we have so many of these stories, whether you read the Mahabharata or you read the Kamasutra. And I know you're thinking that, okay, Mahabharata I can understand, I would go to learn this. But what is the Kamasutra going to teach me? Trust me. This is a book that has a level of philosophy and learning and understanding and a depth that you will not find in any other book. This book, with its philosophy, ladies and gentlemen, could change the gender narrative of this country. This book, the Kamasutra, is the book that inspired 1,500 years of our classical Sanskrit and Tamil literature. For those of you who've read Kalidas or Bhanudatta, most of our literature is something called Prabandham. They're epic romances. They're all romantic fantasies. And they're not romances in terms of Romeo and Juliet, lovers who never meet. These are very much about physical romances. This is the first book that gave complete equality to women as well as to men. This is a book, really, that makes a lot of sense to understand. And up till the 1700s, I want to tell you, up till the 1700s, almost every book on kingship, all the way from Chanakya up to the 1700s, begins with a chapter on Kama. Do you know why? Because it was believed that really good physical relationships meant that the marriage would be stable. People wouldn't want to go off and have affairs here, there, and everywhere. A really good physical relationship meant that the marriage would be stable. If the marriage was stable, society would be stable. If the society was stable, the kingdom would be stable. And so even if it is just for national security, ladies and gentlemen, I would suggest you go off and you read about the Kama Sutra, just for the sake of national security. Because I want to tell you that the erotic literatures of India are utterly the most beautiful, the most refined, and the most elegant that you will ever find. And that's probably because they were written by a woman. I'm convinced that they were written by a woman. For those of you who... Thank you. For those of you who know our mythology, I'm not just making this up. You know that Kamdev is killed off very early in life. Shivji opens up his third eye, he bhasam karos Kamdev. He's dead. When Rati finds out, his wife Rati finds out that he's dead, she wants to kill herself, and the gods say, no, don't do that, because the world can't actually survive without love and desire. So why don't you carry on his work, and eventually we will bring him back to life. And so it was Rati who wrote the Kam Shastras, which is what makes them so different. Very different to the Chinese, the Persian, the Japanese. They truly are very beautiful. And all the literature written after that was based on the metaphors over here. And I'm literally going to tell you about one metaphor because I have a very small amount of time, unfortunately. So, for instance, in the old mythologies, in every old mythology across the universe, across the world, well, not the universe, I don't know what the life forms are in the different parts of the solar system. Across the world, it was not a traditional position for a woman to be on top during lovemaking. It was not the normal place. I guess being on top meant that you were the person in control. It was a matter of choice. The Kamasutra says you could be on top if you were very good at what you did. And being very good meant that you had to be able to bring your partner to orgasm by only moving your hips. You didn't move the rest of your body. So these women would wear ghungroos over here on their upper waist and make sure that the ghungroos didn't make a sound. Okay, pretty awesome, yes. When we actually write about it in literature, we never get explicit. We never say in our ancient literature that, oh, she climbed up on top, she did this. You never say that. You would just say, she put on her ghungroos, she put on her jingling girdle, and you know exactly what is going to happen. Or the man sends his mistress the jingling girdle, and you knew what he was expecting of her. There is a beauty and a subtlety there. But more importantly, to read most of our ancient literature, we need to know what this book says. So make me a promise that you will go off and at least try and study some of it. And I'd like to finish with one thought. Stories are the most important tool in our life. They are what navigate us. Every single day we have a new challenge in life. Every day we have to navigate this challenge. We use stories to do it. These are our sat-navs to get us through life. Stories define who you are. You tell stories of victimhood, you become a victim. You tell stories of empowerment, you feel like being stronger. And if you ever want to create change, real, substantial change, ladies and gentlemen, it is these stories that you have to change. Thank you.